This is the Literacy Mindset Podcast, where education leaders discuss identifying and removing phonological barriers with Mindplay's CEO, Jeff Pendleton.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I am very, very excited about my guest today on another episode of the Literacy Mindset, Dr. Lynmara Colón, who is the Director of Student Opportunity and Multilingual Services in Prince William County School District. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, of course, we love having different, unique perspectives, and I can't wait for yours. There's so many things we've talked about, and excited to kind of dive in. Maybe first, before anything, if you can just give us a little bit of your story, how it is that you kind of navigated your journey to the seat that you're in today in Prince William County.
Right. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I actually came here at the age of 19, but attempted to come here years before. So part of my story is that during Hurricane Hugo, I came here. There was a 7-month gap where I didn't have schooling, and I had an aunt who lived here, surprisingly, in Northern Virginia. And my mom said, well, you got to go to school because schools were being used as shelters. And I attempted to enroll in a school in the area, and they told me that I needed to be retained because I didn't speak the language. And so I ended up going back to Puerto Rico because the idea was never for me to live here for the rest of my life, and ended up coming to DC during my senior year for a trip for honor students. And I remember being on the Capitol steps and telling the girl next to me, I think I'm going to live here one day. And she said, well, you need to learn English if you want to do that. And that was the second time that I heard that English was the qualifier to be here. And I didn't know at that time that I would eventually end up living in this amazing area. But before living here, I worked in Texas, Killeen ISD, where I first landed. My husband was in the military. He served in the Army. And it was tough because I didn't have the language to really practice what I had gone to school. And I was able to enroll back in school, found a community of people who believed in me, and ended up becoming a teacher. And fell in love with the work, but then also saw the need to support kids that looked like me. And years passed by. I'm here in such a beautiful community where there's a lot of diversity, and had opportunities to serve as a teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, and now in the director role. And I am living the dream because I get to create programs, to support programs that really are all about marginalized groups. So often when I tell people that I support Title I, English learners, registration of immigrant youth, world languages, dual language immersion, the sustainability of federal programs and preschool, they said, that's a lot. And it is. But for someone like me to be in the position that I am and to have this dream materialize, it's pretty amazing. And I hope that when kids see me in schools and family back at home, they see the possibilities that, yes, there were rough patches at the beginning, but it can look pretty magical in the end.
Oh, that's a excellent way to get us started. Kind of a great path and journey, and something I think that we can look forward to. You're right. All right, let's talk a little bit about Prince William County. So I don't know, close to 100,000 students that we're dealing with inside of your umbrella. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, we're a little over 90,000. Mm-hmm.
Okay, a little over 90,000, and a bit diverse, as you said. I don't know, a few languages spoken. How many languages?
We have, I keep track of it every day, and more than 150, we are the 10th most diverse in the nation, which is pretty special.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to talk a little bit today about the topic of literacy, and I can only imagine the various ways we're going to address it through the lens of Prince William County. But before we do that, sometimes we jump into technical things and we start talking about foundational skills and how do you make those work. You have a really unique angle that I think is important for us to talk about and address, and that is sort of the culture of learning and how you can create a culture of learning. Because if we don't have a positive, exciting, like I want to come back and learn, then we can probably go down all the technical foundational skills we want, and it may not actually help a whole lot. So you have something that you referred to as the Disney mentality, is what I understand that to be. Can you just share with us a little bit about what that is and how you came about it, and maybe some ways that manifests itself inside of the district?
Sure. And I joke with people, I said, in 5 minutes, if we spend 5 minutes together, you'll quickly learn that I speak Disney. And I use the analogy a lot because I think that we have an opportunity in education to create magical moments for kids. I went to Disney as an adult, and I remember living the experience not only through the lens of my twins, who we thought that it was all about them, but I also learned that there are so many connections between the work that we do and how the parks run. And one of the things that I remember experiencing was that it didn't matter what language you spoke, your credit score, which country you were coming from, even disabilities. Everyone had access. Everyone had access to a ride. Everyone had access to a magical experience. And it didn't matter. We were all together having fun. And one thing that caught my attention was that most of the kids that were there for Make-A-Wish, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, had chosen Disney as their wish. And that has a lot to say because these are children that can choose anything, and they're choosing to go to a park.
All right.
Think about if we made school feel like that I cannot wait to go back next day because I don't know what my teacher has planned, but I know it's going to be fun and I know it's going to be a magical experience. So I come back from my first visit, and I was leading a school at that time who was in need of some improvement. And I posed to the teachers, what do you think if we approach lesson planning from structural, this is the worksheet that we're going to use, page this of the textbook, and we create experiences within the standards that we have to teach. We knew from data that the students were coming to the field trip. They might have forgotten the permission slip, but they were showing up on that day. And it was probably because they knew something fun was about to happen. They knew there was something different. And families were very supportive of that because who wouldn't want their child to experience something magical? And we did that. I committed to do the same for them and creating experiences for them, not what I thought was needed from them. And from my lens, that was the staff meetings. You know, the staff meeting that you have to go to and you can predict it's going to be the PowerPoint and there's not going to be anything for me. My PE teacher gave me that feedback all the time. Lynn, these meetings have nothing for me. I don't have to struggle or teach some of the things that you're presenting. So I started looking at who are my customers, who are my people, and within the things that I'm doing, can I guarantee that they are leaving eager to come back to the next meeting or excited or looking forward to the experience? And I did some changes with that and the teachers as well. And what I did was it translated in extremely high performance kids are talking about it. The goal was for the students to get into that car or get with their parents. And when they asked, what did you do today? We were trying to move from the, I don't know, to, I can't wait to tell you. And as a result, families were so excited. Volunteers increased because we were really intentional about making magic happen in the school. So in this role, I joke that I have the park hopper, and that's the goal, because I want to make sure that no matter which school I go to, that I have supported our staff in creating those moments.
Right. That's excellent. Okay, you used the word customer, which I do this a lot, and I don't hear the word customer a lot from your side of the school district. What do you think it is about that framing that helps with the experiences that you just described?
How I look at feedback, because if you think about it, the people at the schools don't work for me. Kids don't work for me. Families don't work for me. I work for them. So I'm always very curious about what moves them and what makes them tick, so I can be intentional about the work that I am doing. Because surveys can be hurtful, but they can only be hurtful if you get them, you don't reflect on them, and if you are giving them to people you don't seek to later understand. And that's the difference when you see, we can use the word stakeholders, but I use customer because I want to make sure that whatever I'm creating, how I'm spending funds, the programs that we have in place are yielding results. That only happens when I'm motivated to know who I'm serving and get to know them enough so I can create an experience that meets their needs. Because we're competing in schools every day with technology and external factors that if we're not intentional about serving folks, about asking questions, we can lose the customer. And they can decide that, yeah, they're going to show up. I always say that kids don't drop out in high school. They leave us way before if we're not engaging. So thinking about that and how Disney, very successful companies, Ritz-Carlton, Starbucks, there's many others who are constantly engaging and asking questions and curious about what is it that you need, so then they can be intentional about crafting experiences that are geared towards that specific stakeholder customer.
Okay. Well, that's an excellent way of looking at it, and I love the perspective. So now we've laid a foundation. First things first, you got to have a culture that students are excited, that teachers are excited to teach in. I obviously very interested now in attending a staff meeting of yours, because I can't wait to see what a Disney experience staff meeting looks like. So now what? How do we think about literacy across a spectrum, right? We got pre-K all the way to 12th grade. We have a lot of different things going on, and you've got multiple languages that are happening. So give us just some high level aspects to really impactful tactical things, right? Like, okay, great. We've established culture as there, but then what are some other things? How do you go about differentiation? You kind of talked about that through the Disney experience. How do you go about making it an experience that students want to come back to, even though they might be learning skills that are below their grade level or their, what the society expects of them age-wise today? Can you talk us through some of those things?
Yes. And one of the things that has been very successful for us is this idea of kid watching. We have a lot of data, especially in my role. I can pull multiple sources of data. I can tell you about scores. I can tell you, how many kids are doing this way in comprehension and phonics, all of that quantitative. It's important and it gives me a lot of information, but it cannot stop there. And so our
Right.
teams have been highly engaged in being in schools, doing what we call kid watching, trying to understand the why. And this particular team is English, someone from the English learner program, someone from language arts, and someone from our Title I funded schools, because you have three different lenses and you have three experts that are going in and really getting qualitative data on, is this a language? Is this trauma or, external factors that we need to support because the student doesn't have the support at home? Or is this a language arts, deficit? We're also able to see how the kids are interacting with materials because we do a lot of purchases to support kids in literacy, but how are they responding? And is it yielding the outcomes that we were expecting? But at the end, we have been able to identify that, yes, we can talk about a literacy issue or some gaps, but not every kid is the same. And so how are we supporting teachers in planning, not for the kids they think they have, but for the student they actually have in front of them? And how do you use the tools and differentiate accordingly so that you're not off track? Because there's a lot of resources that are holistic, but we do know that there are certain things that are keeping kids moving from one level to the next. And the last thing I offer is, what conversations are we having with students about growth and possibilities? Because I see kids who I talk to and, well, I'm not a good reader. I won't go there because I'm not a good reader. Well, you have approximations, right? Yes, you might not be on grade level, but you have some approximations. And then who is the person that's cheering on the student and saying, you're not there yet, but I'm going to make sure you get there. But for that, you got to know your customer. Otherwise, you'll be prescribing something or offering, saying, okay, here, go to the roller coaster. And you haven't even been to the teacups. And so there's high expectations for all, but we have to be mindful of not rushing expectations, especially when it comes to language, because we know that can get in the way. And how do we have an ESOL or L expert and a literacy expert come together and partner up so you don't have to give one for the other? Because I do believe that both can coexist beautifully. We've done that, but we have to prioritize the time to have those conversations and look at every kid by name and by need.
Okay. I love that. Can we drill in a little bit on this high expectations versus rushed expectations? What do you mean exactly? And where do you see that manifest itself most often?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you another analogy, right? There's a reason why we have height requirements for certain rides.
Okay.
Because they're designed that way. But that does not mean that you will be prohibited from riding that ride. You just have to get there. And I see growth the same way. I cannot aspire to, and let's take an AP class, if I have not been intentional about the foundational skills. So yes, we can talk about that being a goal, but then how are we creating a plan for the student to see the possibilities, and also for our teachers to have the collaboration time and the knowledge on how we're going to get there? Because you can have people that will say, well, that's not my job. That's not what I do. But what we do is all of us, regardless of the role, we are a champion for kids. So I'm not rushing you to get to AP, but I'm going to have high expectations that you can do it, because I'm going to make sure you get there. And that comes with a plan, with intentionality, and knowing your student and having conversations with them about what it takes and checking in. You should not have a student that's your student for this amount of time. I would love to see more teachers going to graduation to see this is how the end looked like, and you had something to do with that, because every little bit matters. So that's what I mean. When I came here at 19, I did not have the English language proficiency I have now. I was not expected within a year to earn a doctorate, but with the right supports and scaffolds, I was able to earn this degree. This was not rushed. Right. The expectation was not changed, but I needed to work on some things before getting there. And I think the same has to happen for students, but you have to know what they need.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical part of it, right? Is back to the kid watching or observation. Like, how do you get to the level of understanding? And that's another point maybe to drill into. So many times we hear teachers, especially in the upper grades, reference sort of grade level that a student might be reading at, but lack a degree of specificity on what let's call it a gap or whatever barrier might be there to grade level. Are there specific things that you do to kind of help drill in and make sure that you have better and deeper insights, not just seventh grader reading at third grade level? That's not all that helpful to a teacher.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So we are working on addressing that, but also bringing a lot of other people into the conversation, because one of the questions that we've asked ourselves is, are we dealing with a gap that because of a disability the student's is coming with, or was this gap created? And we know that with COVID, that was used a lot as the reason why our students are not reading, but we also have to be honest about the integrity and the fidelity of Tier 1 instruction and how that plays into some of the things that we see in secondary for students that are not reading at a proficient level, right? And right. That's an important conversation, because you can remediate, but then how do you go back to understand, where did this happen? I talk a lot about long-term English learners who are not making growth in a number of years. And one of my colleagues from out of state said, well, the kids are becoming long-term Ls. And I said, no, they're not. We make them long-term Ls, because if we have not provided the instruction, they're ours, right? If they're sitting with us, we are responsible for providing them with the supports. So we have created this problem, and they looked at me, oh, I never thought about it that way. But then going back to your question, prioritizing who's at the planning table, we need to make sure that our linguistic specialists and our reading specialists are part of this conversation, and not as a side order, but really helping our teachers understand what's available and how do these supports look like within the content areas, because every teacher is a literacy teacher. You might teach science, but the vocabulary demand is such that we have to pour into content teachers so that they're not afraid of what the reading proficiency or language is going to do to their scores or their data, but instead feel comfortable that, you know what, I know enough about scaffolds and how to differentiate for this student so they can have access. And I have to go back to the experience, because in some of these content spaces, I can create experiences within peak moments. Think about the lab, history, science, social studies, PE, that I don't even know that I am below in reading, because I'm so engaged that I can't tell that this is the merry-go-round. Think about how many adults like the merry-go-round. And we often think it's for kids, but it's still fun. People still make the line and they have a great time. So are the resources that our students are interacting with making them feel as if they are below grade level readers, or are they still having access to the content within their level? And then we continue to up the ante. But you got to know, you got to plan, you got to have the right people on your team, and create spaces where those that feel this is not my job feel comfortable with, hey, can we co-teach on this lesson? Can we connect after? Because you said something about phonics that I'm not sure I understand, but I need you in my life. And we can do that because the expertise is not reserved only for the few. We should be talking about this in multiple spaces so our teachers know enough to support our kids, and then them not only having the supports when they're with the reading specialist or the language teacher. There should be pixie dust of this all over the school so that they feel seen. And you know what? I'm making progress.
Yeah. Well, I think that sounds amazing. I love it. Do you have anything that you can offer the audience here as to suggestions on how do you create that environment? How do you create an environment where a science teacher feels like they have the responsibility for literacy and also the network, the community, the expertise that they can lean on? Are there some things that you can suggest for ways to do that?
Yes. And so, you know what is the very first thing that you get when you go into the park? What's at the very front? It's the map, and it's the schedules of the shows. And that's your guide. You get that map, you know where you're going, you know where everything is. And then on the back, you have the shows with the times, right? The timetable for the school becomes the schedule.
Okay.
So how are you scheduling people to have opportunities to work together? And the map becomes the vision of school leaders, district leaders on how can this look like? Because you have to create spaces for people to come together. There's many times where folks only get together when they're at the staff meeting. And some of these supporting roles are just like when we are in trouble. And we have to bring them in before we are there so that we can be proactive and not reactive. I always say that you can't co-teach if you can't co-plan. And a strategy is, do we have an open door classroom policy, not for administrators just to observe teachers, but if I want to learn, I can learn from you. Because we recognize that we can't have people out all the time, but the answer is in the room. How are we celebrating teachers and classes who are doing things well and giving opportunity for others to come watch what excellence looks like, and move out of shaming folks from not being there, because we all have an opportunity to grow. I love being in schools, and my team will tell you I have an expectation that they're in schools every week. And I'll tell you why, because I want to see how kids are interacting with resources. I want to talk to teachers about their experience with the resources. And I want to know if my map is taking place the way I intended to do. You have to do life with people. And it starts with the schedule. You can't be so busy that you're saying you got to meet on your own time, and, either before school or after school. And kids have to be scheduled with intentionality as well. I joke with my daughter's a new teacher, and her principal, who's phenomenal, was very intentional about building her class. Jeff, she is a new teacher. Yes, she has a special education endorsement. Yes, she is bilingual, but I respect that she was given the class that she was given, because you're going to have the best in front of the kids that need the best. and so her and I talk about it all the time. She said, but Mom, I don't have a lot of kids that speak Spanish. That's fine. And you'll get there, because a good leader is going to be strategic about the timetable and who's going to have, these students, and the supports and the training that you need to have also to make sure that you are building the right scaffolds. So I said, you're going to get there, but right now, that was a really good decision. And she's doing well because, her administration understood that. So building time for professional learning within the school, it's important when you bring in new resources, and for us to work together to have checking points. So we're not saying, okay, you're going to do this. Here you go. This is the new intervention kit or the tool. But let's have checking points around what are some successes, what's keeping you from using it with integrity. Right. We have a process of after action reviews, and we do that all the time, and it's non-threatening. People that want to get better, they do that. You have to come back and assess, how are we going to elevate, enhance, or make course corrections. But again, the timetable, the vision, you have to have a vision for literacy at your school. And when we say all, it's for all, not the ones that are easy to teach or that I can buy the books and they already know how to turn the page. How much do I know about kids that are coming from literacy deserts? Right. Because that's the reality. With our diversity, we have kids that haven't experienced books, let alone the really rigorous process that we have here in the United States to teach kids how to read. We talk about all of these programs, but we have kids that don't know how to turn a page. How are we going to tackle that? We have to bring the learner into the conversation as well, and that has to be planned for.
Yeah. No, those are some awesome suggestions. The level of intentionality that we take, the master schedule being like the map and the show schedule for everyone, and to help build the culture around how we can tactically tackle it. I love that. We could spend so much time talking about this. I love every moment of it. We'll wrap up with just one final question, and that is, take us into the future a little bit. What are some things that you feel like need to change, or what are some things that you feel like you love what they're doing and they better still be here in 10 years because we're doing great with them? Just give us a little bit of the Lynn crystal ball.
Well, I'm doing a lot of research and work around AI and personalized learning, and we've talked about personalized learning for quite some time. But I think it's going to look different. And we talked about feedback. And can you imagine if kids build their own learning plan? That would be pretty magical. If we teach them the ability to create that time schedule of, I want to go from this ride to this ride, because they know so much about their strengths that they can do that. And we're seeing students wanting to do that. I don't think that us, the adults, are necessarily ready to take that on, because we've operated so much from, I'm going to feed you everything that I went to school for, and I'm excited to tell you. But I think we're going to see kids more in the driver's seat of driving their learning, and us learning also from them. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the possibilities, because that means that they're going to be taking care of me when I retire, and we're going to have some pretty smart kids who have figured out a new way to do school, and that's encouraging.
I love that. I love that. Okay. Well, we are on the precipice of a new way of doing school. You've heard it first here from Dr. Colón. I love it so much. Thank you for taking time out of your day and sharing your wonderful experiences with us. And hopefully we can connect again soon.
There you go. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Learn how we help students by identifying and removing phonological barriers at mindplay.com.